Good presentation today, but there were some scary numbers in there in terms of the levels of both topsoil and subsoil acidity that we're facing across the wheat belt.
Yeah, the studies, the separate studies are showing that around 70 to 75% of topsoils are below pH 5.5, which is sort of the critical level that you need to be at.
And that's not from a small sample group either. 100,000 samples plus?
Yeah, one study was over 100,000 samples. The other study included soil samples from the southern, northern and central agricultural regions in WA.
And given how bad that is on the topsoil, you would assume the subsoil is suffering as well?
Not as bad though, only 50% of samples were below the critical level of 4.8.
Historically, I think people have probably considered 5.5 okay, acceptable. Obviously that's not the right target level. Or people have let it slide below that in the topsoil before they've started to worry.
Yeah, I think probably not enough line's been going out to deal with the acidity in the whole profile. So it's been just enough to deal with the topsoil pH, but subsoil pH has been slipping.
And a low-level topsoil treatment, what's the time lag and expectation for that to leach through to ameliorate subsoil issues?
The window is about 4 to 7 years, so you're more likely to be 4 years to achieve a change in subsoil pH in high rainfall, lighter textured soils, and more likely to be closer to 7 years in low rainfall, heavy textured soils.
So given the time lag of 4 to 7 years, depending on soil type, etc., what can we do to speed that process up if we do have a problem with our subsoil?
Well, incorporation's one option, obviously. It certainly speeds up the process of getting lime to depth, but the effectiveness of getting lime to depth depends on the different ploughs.
Is there one that you consider more effective, or does it vary depending on your country, your soil type, your environment?
The rotary machines are certainly the most effective at mixing evenly to depth, but they're also the most expensive. The moldboard plough is very effective at placing lime at depth, but it's in quite a concentrated band.
And is concentration a good thing if you've got a real problem, or is it better to have it mixed right through the soil?
It, to a degree, depends on where the acidity problem is. So, for example, if your acidity problem is at 35 or 40 centimetres, it's unlikely that you'll work that depth with a rotary spader, so placing it at that depth with a moldboard plough certainly could be a sensible option.
It seems like each of these machines is being used to implement other issues. So are people now saying, well, I'm moldboard ploughing for weed inversion or non-wetting soil, so they're more inclined to do the deep liming? Yeah,
very much so. It's an opportunity to deal with two or three constraints in one go.
And these, there's been a lot of work just done on spading or inversion with the moldboard. How do they go interacting with other soil nutrients?
Well, what we've found with the moldboarding is that it does a pretty good job of burying the organic matter. So, for example, in a water repellent soil, that's a good thing, but you are bringing up low nutrient content soil to the surface. So, in some cases though, the soil you bring up is actually of equal nutrient content that was originally at the surface because nutrients have leached to depth.
If you're inverting the soil like that and you're running a very low pH of a 4.5 at depth, are you bringing that 4.5 pH soil to the top?
With moldboarding, yes, yeah. With the rotary machines though, you tend to get an average of the top 30-35 centimetres.
Yeah. So I guess if you're bringing the low pH stuff to the top, it's probably easier to ameliorate that at a later date.
Yeah,
anyway.
Absolutely. And some growers are moving towards a strategy of top dressing, say 2 tonnes of lime, moldboarding, and then going back and top dressing to treat the acid soil that's been brought to the surface.
Has the work been going long enough to understand how long that will last? I mean, typically guys have treated maybe once every 3 years as part of a rotation. Do we understand how quick that deep lime will take effect and how often we have to retreat?
No, I guess we're really just starting to gain an understanding of where the lime is put and how quickly it moves. Because one of the other components of placing lime at depth is that it moves less from water moving through the profile, in that you get less drainage through that layer than say you do through the surface layer.
So in a high rainfall environment,
Yep.
you may get a quicker response, but overall, over a period of sort of 4 or 5 years as things stabilise, does environment play a big part, or is it only that initial sort of speed of activity?
Environment certainly plays a big part in the alkalinity moving to the subsoil, certainly. I mean, that's really driven by rainfall.
And I guess the cost offset, if we can do it as part of a program, it's going to be better, less of an immediate cost. What time of the year do you guys suggest doing this inversion with whichever machine you're looking at?
Really as close to seeding as possible so that you're minimising your wind erosion risk. And if possible when it's relatively moist. I mean, if you're trying to invert, then the one-way ploughs and the mobile ploughs do a much better job of inversion when the soil is moist, that's for sure.
Ideally you do it when it's moist and close to seeding. If we're doing a heavy-handed inversion or a spading operation, we may actually get some weed control as well, so that's a sort of a third benefit in the process.
Yeah, that's a double-edged sword though. You may get some weed control, but you also may stir up some weeds that have been sitting below the surface. May end up with a population of weeds germinating that have been sitting dormant for a while.
What's been the farmer uptake at this point of a deep placement by any mechanism? Are people jumping on board with it?
Most of the adoption really is guys who are using tillage to treat water repellents. I think that's where it's really stemming from. So those guys are looking at killing 2 or 3 birds with one stone. So with moldboard ploughing, they are burying their water repellent soil, burying their weed population, and while they're at it, they're using that tillage to bury some lime as well.
Okay, yeah. If you're going to run over it with a costly machine, you may as well make the most of it.
Yeah, absolutely.